Back on Get Up with a developing story surrounding Kawhi Leonard. Shams Charania is with us now for more. Shams, what do you know?
The Clippers and Toronto Raptors are seriously engaged on a trade that would send Kawhi Leonard back to Toronto. And sources tell me that Kawhi Leonard has made it clear around the league that Toronto would be the only place he would commit to on a long-term contract extension if he's traded out of LA. And that's at the crux of this situation. The Clippers have not made any commitment to Kawhi Leonard beyond his current contract, which has 1 year and about $50 million left on it. And so a player of Kawhi Leonard's caliber just made the second team All-NBA. Having a long-term commitment, it clearly is a very important part. And back with Toronto means a few things. One, the familiarity that exists between these two sides. Kawhi Leonard was there for one season, 2018, 2019, won a championship there. Most of that front office regime is still intact, led by Bobby Webster, the executive vice president of basketball operations. And he won there. There's history there. And so when you think about those conversations, they've been going on over the last few days. They're expected to continue over the course of today to see if a deal can come to fruition. And right now, one thing that's become clear around the league is Kawhi Leonard does have a amount of leverage in this situation because he has just 1 year left on his deal, and Toronto is the place he would sign an extension.
NBA free agency heating up. It's only 8:30 in the morning. Windy, what more can you add here?
Well, you may now be asking yourself, what about this investigation that the NBA has been undertaking for months on end about Kawhi Leonard? Adam Silver, 26 days ago, announced that it was time for the investigation to end. We have no results of the investigation. However, the league would not approve a trade involving Kawhi Leonard if they thought they were, would be detrimental to the team acquiring him. That's number one. Number two, the Raptors see an opportunity here as they look around the Eastern Conference. Giannis was traded to the Heat. The Heat are not a complete team. They have to build. The Celtics may be losing Jaylen Brown. The Hornets, another team that was seen as an up-and-coming team, is taking pieces of their team apart. The Cavaliers may lose, the team that beat them in 7 games, may lose some pieces off their team to manage the second apron. They see an opportunity and a chance to have an exclusive negotiating window to upgrade their roster. They certainly have a great interest in trying to do so.
Bobby Marks, jump in here. Kawhi back in Toronto, if it were to happen, would that put the Raptors in that top tier of contender in the Eastern Conference?
Well, I think it's a matter of what's going back, right? I think when you look at Toronto, it certainly he makes $50 million, and when you're looking at salary, you're looking at probably a player like potentially Brandon Ingram here. I think where Toronto is, yes, it was a great story last year. They were a top 5 team. Now you got to remember, Indiana's coming back also with Tyrese Halliburton. I wouldn't be ready to crown them as a top 4 team, but I would say this does make them significantly better when you add a top 15 player in Kawhi Leonard, who is coming off probably one of his best years he's had in a long time, and he's shown that he was healthy last year.
Vince Goodwill, is this the type of move where Toronto should get ultra aggressive trying to go after someone like Kawhi?
Yeah, I think when you look at their roster and you looked at their first round series, you're like, this team needs a guy. Like Scotty Barnes is one of the best sort of, Swiss Army knives in the league where he can do a bunch of different things, but you don't want him trying to take late game shots all the time. You look at the Eastern Conference, the Knicks are clearly at the top. They're the defending champions. They deserve all the respect. But after that, it's a bunch of questions in the Eastern Conference, and I don't think this move makes them singularly that much better, but it puts you in the conversation. It puts you in the conversation of trade deadline moves, stuff in free agency, that if you make other moves on the fringes of it, you can elevate yourself to the top of the Eastern Conference, or at least in the conversation.
Windy, jump back in here. Kawhi to Toronto, where does that change things for you in terms of competition in the East?
So let's look at what their options are and who to trade. Part of Toronto's struggle is after Scotty Barnes, they've got a bunch of guys on enormous contracts that don't make them very flexible. Jakob Poeltl's owed $100 million after this season. Emmanuel Quickley owed $100 million after this season. Brandon Ingram, after a poor showing in the postseason last year, $80 million after this season. If you're the Clippers, you're not really excited about those guys. What you're excited about are all the draft picks that the Raptors have. The Raptors own all of their first-round picks going forward, 7 of them. They could trade up to 4. Not saying they would, but they could trade up to 4. Plus, they have Colin Murray-Boyles, who was on the all-rookie team last year. So if they make this, first off, they got to make a trade that the Clippers want to do. The Clippers are not under pressure to trade him. But if the Clippers find one of those players that fits salary-wise, what do the Raptors have on their team afterward? Then you would, like Bobby said, then you would evaluate where they would rank.
Chums, what does it do then for the Clippers? If Kawhi ends up going to Toronto with the package that comes back, what does that signal about LA's future?
Clearly, this is a team that has been moving in a younger direction, right? You see it through the trade of James Harden. They go get Darius Garland, who's much younger, 10 years younger. Then you trade Ivica Zubac. You get a younger player in Ben Mathurin. You get a bunch of draft picks. So they got 2 first-round picks in the trade with Indiana. They got 1 second-round pick from the trade from Cleveland. They also got 1 second in the trade from Indiana. This trade with Toronto, my understanding, it would bring a good amount of draft capital back. And then it just becomes a measure of, is it enough? What's the threshold to get a deal done? And that's what the Clippers and the Raptors have been discussing. That those are talks that are going to continue on today and the rest of this week. But I just think, imagine if you told yourselves 8 years ago that Kawhi Leonard would get traded to Toronto and say, I'm never going to play there beyond just 1 season. Bolts goes to L.A. and now, after 7 years in L.A., is saying, I only want to go to Toronto. And a lot of that is because of his familiarity there, his desire to be back in that city, that market, because he knows it very well. But this is just a crazy turn of events that in 7 years, now Kawhi Leonard could be back in Toronto.
Well said. NBA free agency opens Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll have everything you need to know, including the latest on Kawhi Leonard and a potential touch this morning and the biggest name on the market. Wendy, what do we need to know about LeBron James?
Okay, Joe. So from what I am told, the Lakers, as soon as the NBA Finals ended, reached out to LeBron and his representatives, expressing an interest in retaining him. And since that time, they have been interested in having a meeting with LeBron, but they have not made an offer. And from what I have been told, LeBron has just not been available for the meeting. And you may say, well, why is that? I don't know, Joe. I don't know why LeBron has not been available, but he has not been available for the meeting. And obviously, free agency begins tomorrow. So I am not assuming that LeBron for sure is playing next year. I am not assuming that there's a reason why he has not met with them. Yesterday, I believe he played golf in Akron, Ohio. I'm sure it was a lovely day in Ohio yesterday. I was there. I will just point something out that I think we should watch today. Today is the option pickup day for Draymond Green. Draymond, and the reason this is interesting is that the Warriors have long planned for Draymond Green to opt into this $27 million player option and, play with him this year. And, you've got Jimmy Butler coming back from injury and Steph Curry, etc. But Draymond has not done anything, and his deadline is today. And so all I'm going to say is this. If Draymond Green opts out of that contract, I will just point out he is represented by the same agency as LeBron James, Clutch Sports. And if Draymond Green, and Bobby can explain this more, if Draymond opts out of that contract, it opens the window for him to maneuver and the Warriors to maneuver around to offer a free agent. Maybe it's LeBron, maybe it's somebody else, $15 million with their mid-level exception. So I'm not making any assumptions about anything. I'm just telling you these are the facts here on June 29th.
I'm going to stand for this one. I feel like we got to stand for this one. That is how you start a Monday with the NBA free agency period. Bobby, the possibility of LeBron James actually leaving in LA and heading to the Warriors. How possible?
Well, listen, we learned in this NBA anything is possible here. And as Brian said, when you look at Draymond Green, that's going to be a big indicator here. Here's a player that's got a $27.7 million player option. Let's say he opted out of that number and reduced it on his next contract to, let's say, $22 million, and Golden State made it up on the back end here. That gives them the ultimate flexibility to have that $15 million non-tax mid-level exception available. Now, what I would be looking at if I was in that Golden State front office is how else can we make this roster better besides adding LeBron James? And I know there's a hesitancy to move off of Jimmy Butler's $56 million contract. But what can Jimmy Butler and multiple first-round picks get you out in the marketplace? Can it get you